interesting. That was this. This is the second album from Steven Wilson in just like a couple months in the early parts of 2007. But so then that was on the 16th of April. Then within the month of April, I don't remember what date it was, but this band put out their second album. Their band called the Pack Cecilia. Found out about this through some of the Dredge message board the Dredge fans on the Dredge message board. Musically, it's sort of like post metal, surf rock kind of thing. The interesting thing, "Blessed Are the Bonds" is the name of this. All the songs have like the tragedy, the tomb song, the progress, the machine, and they printed and gave these CDs out free. That was, and they had done this with their previous record. I don't know if they just had the money to press them, and the people they weren't. Maybe there were people that definitely didn't, or they just felt like they wanted to do it on principle, just to give here rather than download our album for free, like you'll probably find on the sites. Here you go, I'll send you a CD. I don't mean they sent out a couple thousand maybe, but "Blessed Are the Bonds" from the Pax Cecilia. I can't remember where they're from. Somewhere on the West Coast maybe. Their final record, I believe it was. "Blessed Are the Bonds" came out sometime in April 2007. Okay, so moving on to May. Dirt Parabans puts out their debut album, "The Cage," which I believe it's the album that has their cover of it has the first version of "Great Vacation," I believe. Yes. But it also has their cover of um Beatles song. I want to say Eleanor Rigby? Yeah, I think it was Eleanor Rigby they covered on that. It's not as good as their other records, although I'd say it's close to the one after it. Yeah, they opened the Hollywood Songs, the other one, the other ones. I don't have a physical copy. They don't think they ever. They did print them at one point, but they're out of. I'd have to find them on eBay or Discogs or something. But yeah, the Cage, which musically they were kind of like the Deer Hunter, and so actually their debut album came out before the Deer Hunters sort of debut full length album in a way, um, but that came out on May 8th, 2007. It's the same month. It's ironic. Um, so then on May 14th, mid May, we got a whole slew of records. Of course, this is when 2007 started that year, 2005, 2006, somewhat 2007. Long epic list, but hipster approved band. I know there were some members that had been in previous bands that the hipsters liked, but Battles, their album Mirror. They had put out a few EPs before this I didn't include, but I think of them first and foremost for this debut album Mirror. The only album they released with vocalist, very experimental vocalist, Tyande Braxton. Songs like Tonto and Atlas, and it's math rock. It's very quirky, very fun, energetic, almost danceable at times. It kind of was the definitive math rock album in some ways. I mean, there were math rock albums that came out before this, and many that came out since. And of course, Battles would put out a few other records, at least one, maybe two. At least I don't think they did two others, but Tyande was only on this album and Mirrored. I found like the combination, the formula really worked for the most part on this record. So um, that came out on May 14th, 2007. The hipsters were going apeshit for it. Like, oh, the hipsters like prog. I mean, there were like Yes moments and of course King Crimson moments on it. Um, but that came out on May 15th or May 14th, 2007. So May 15th saw a couple records. One being the second and final album from Canada's own People for Audio. I just showed the other record. Oh, I'm going to grab it here quickly. And I just finally got a physical copy. And this will be our homecoming. But this album has vocals. And well, I wouldn't necessarily disagree that it sounds a lot like Pink Floyd at points compared to Besnard Lakes and Do Makes They Think. Yeah. I really, I feel like this band could have found a bigger audience. It's just being in Canada. Ben Sinister dealt with a similar condition, but they managed to sort of persevere. But every time I listen to this album, I like it. I don't go back to it. Song like The Captain or Captain, Carlos. Yeah, the photo is sort of budget conscious, and of course my jewel case is cracked. But I remember I found this band. I was like, man, this is really good. Why don't people know? They have an odd name, People for Audio. The New Ancients is the name of the album, but May 15th, 2007, released on that date. Another welcome addition to Montreal's ongoing epic art rock legacy, ranging from the hustle, something back porch sing along jams to grandiose psych rock masterpieces. Yeah. I mean, they're kind of like, again, they're kind of like Mutt Yumu or Kasika in some ways, people for audio, in that they put out two really good records, but that was it, and that was the end of their history. Anyway, that was on the 15th. And then the same day, I'm including this because it's the one record from this band that I have listened to and liked somewhat, although their most famous record came out a few years before, my wife likes. The Wilco album, Sky Blue Sky, you know, came out on the 15th of May that year as well. Once I was in a record store and they were playing, I was like, what is this? It sounded like the Grateful Dead or Floyd. But Wilco could be a band I could get more into. I know they're hipster approved, but that doesn't mean their music can't be good. Um, anyway, some people say like they like Nesmith. They owe a lot to Nesmith. They were the continuation of that sort of progressive country rock stuff in some ways. So then a week later sees the big debut album from, or sort of debut album of sorts. It was the second album in some ways, semantics, of The Deer Hunter, Act 2, The Meaning of and All Things Regarding Misleading, which I was already a fan, but this kind of supplanted my fandom. Just kind of realizing what a genius Casey Crescendo. And I would always, around this time, I was really still taking in Between the Heart and the Synapse too. So I was like I was becoming just obsessed with Casey Crescenzo. And I've talked about it almost ad nauseum on this channel before. I did reviews and stuff. I mean, Red Hands, I still have a soft spot for, as much as Casey doesn't love that song and has to play it live reluctantly. But Dear Misleading, The Procession, Lake in the River, The Church and the Dime, Smiling Swine, the Beatles elements, the Beach Boys elements, the chamber rock elements, sort of grandiose kind of storytelling, but not being cheesy. All this sort of sort of multi-part suites on some of these songs. The Oracles and the Delphi Express and Church and the Dime. Evicted, Where the Road Parts is very dreamy. Vital Vessel Vindic. It's a perfect record. You know, love it to death, and it's still my favorite, the Deer Hunter record. I mean, I love Act 4 a lot, but I still go with this one. And a very important record in the history of the style, because it really put them, really, because not many people heard Act 1. A lot of people were introduced to them with this album. But anyway, Act 2 came out on May 22nd, 2007. So then on June 1st, Act 2, Meaning of and All Things Regarding Misleading, it's like a mouthful. There were a lot of albums with mouthfuls for like you think about the Coheed record and um, you know, the debut EP, because she had a demo that had come out in 2003 called The Audition, but which she worked with the Outcast guys. But really, this is their official first release. Metropolis, the Chase Suites from Janelle Monae, came out on June 1st, 2007. I wasn't aware of her till 2010. A lot of people with Metropolis, the second part, the Arc Android. But this has probably my favorite Janelle Monae song still, In Many Moons. That's super catchy, dreamy. I love the sort of the narrative, the lyrics in that song. You know, talking about rap and hip hop and like other styles of music. Uh, it's great. The March of the Wolf Mask. It's really it's like an epic suite. So it's really one piece actually. I never thought about it. The way this is the Chase Suite is really one song actually. So that actually, this could be an epic. Could be considered in the pantheon of epics, especially progressive art rock epics. But anyway, this came out on June 1st, 2007. But I wouldn't discover it till a few years later, like a lot of people. But then on a few days later, on the 4th, came out the album that introduced myself, although I found out about this a few months later, I think, too, but some people did. The 4th album from Biffy Clyro, and it got more distribution on this album, Puzzle, which is it's 14 tracks, so it's not short, like Apples in Stereo this year, and a lot of bands were putting out albums that had, other than like Cloud Cult's album wasn't as long as their in terms of track numbers, but some of this I know that Simon Neil, his dad had passed away, I think. So some of the influence of this, like what is it? Who's Got a Match? And Living's a Problem. Living's a Problem because everything dies. But I feel like this album is their best album because it flows really well and the production is a step up. No, the two records that followed it I like a lot and we'll be talking about for sure. Pretty much almost all the records, but yeah, Biffy Clyro, they were kind of doing heavy art rock in the Fair to Midland Carnival style in some sort. Actually, Carnival's debut album got U.S. distribution this year, but came out originally in 2005, as I talked about. But Puzzle from Biffy Clyro, Scotland's own, the power trio, um, came out on the 4th of April 2007. It's kind of interesting. The next release on the list came out 8 days later. Just talking about them and talked about them frequently because to me they're sort of maybe one of the most, if not the most successful bands in the sound. This is their most successful album to me. Fair to Midlands, Fables from a Mayfly. What I tell you 3 times is true. Came out on June 12th, 2007. I'd already seen them live, and of course they had put out Enter Fun to Stifle on the few years before that, and then the EP from the year before that, the Drawn Quarter EP. But this has the bigger production from David Botrill on Surgical Strike. So they were, the song Dance of the Manatee was getting a little bit of distribution, showed up in some movie trailers. And I saw them live so many times. I saw them 3 or 4 times just in 2007 alone. So I basically took this this album in religiously. There aren't really many guitar solos, but it didn't really hurt the album. Songs like Walls of Jericho is super catchy. Wolf Descends Upon the Spanish Sahara, Kyla Cries Cologne, vice versa. Having the glitzy production makes it sound even better in some ways. Although I've always gone back and forth. Ultimately, I would choose this over Into Fun to Stifle, but Tall Tales, Taste Like Sour Grapes, Upgrade Brigade, that song was from. So like 5 or 6 new songs that weren't on Into Fun to Stifle, but there were like 6 songs re-recorded. And Say When, that's like the sort of falsetto, big vocal ending track, that ballad. April Fool's and Eggman, A Seafarer's Knot. I've always wanted to try watching the movie Big Fish with this album because there's a lot of similar lyrics and sort of tall tales and sort of like stories that were told by people and their experiences around the world, around the country, that might or might not be really that accurate, but they're good for sort of folklore. That came out on the 12th of June 2007. The day after that, on the 13th of 2007, sees another album from Pepe Deluxe, Spare Time Machine, which includes many songs I like. It would be a few years before they put out their next record, which was their masterpiece. But I talked about this when I talked about Pepe Lux last summer. Songs like Mischief of Cloud 6, what is it? Pussycat Rock, Apple Thief, Last of the Great Explorers, and Go for Blue. Go for Blue. That song got a video, I believe. Yeah, I mean, they definitely were fine tuning their sort of approach when they were the first 2 records. The first record was more like electronic DJ mixed with a little pop. This was going more retro pop, and using those instruments, those old time instruments, and Spare Time Machine, just from the title alone. But the 2 guys from Finland, James Malmstrom and Jane Spectrum and Paul Malmstrom rather. But Spare Time Machine, originally released on, I think it's on vinyl, but it's not cheap. Someday I'll maybe be able to find a copy for an affordable price. 13th of June 2007. So then the 17th of June, 4 days later, sees the one record I kind of see, the one record I know from this artist who is kind of mixing prog with artsy alternative music, and he's done soundtracking with Phideaux's Doomsday Afternoon. It's a beloved record. Although I haven't listened to it in a long time, but I did like it. I didn't love it, but I liked it enough to sort of acknowledge why people like it so much, and they were talking about it. That came out on June 17th, 2007. So it's like that week there was like an album almost every day. June 18th, an album by the band Shels. I can't remember where they're from. Somewhere in Europe, maybe. Could be wrong. That with a an asterisk and then the word Shels. This is their debut album, Days of the Dying Bow or Days Sea of a Dying Dhow. Sort of considered post metal or post heavy post rock. They're from LA. No, they're from the UK actually. Although they moved to LA. I don't know, maybe later they did, but yeah, I mean, I spent less time with this album than the album that followed it, which I actually do have a physical copy of, but they were an interesting band, kind of. Yeah, I mean, they weren't like fast riffs, but the atmosphere they created never got boring compared to a lot of sort of sludgy music. But I wouldn't call them metal exactly. They're just kind of very layered. As much as like Time of Orchids is metal, they're not, but Shels is the 18th of June 2007. Sea of a Dying Dhow. the debut album from the UK band. Later moved to California. So then the 19th of June, it's like every day in June there was a new album for a little while there, almost every day. The final record for a little while from this band, the Polyphonic Spree, puts out The Fragile Army, and this album does include the services of one St. Vincent, who's right here in the picture. Of course, the Polyphonic Spree, so Tim DeLaughter, the band from Texas, known most for being like the wall of sound, sort of a modern Phil Spector kind of thing, having like 25 to 40 members, and touring members, a lot of singers. So, but this album, The Fragile Army, I feel like when I got into them was the one I heard the most. I heard the songs on the radio, like Running Away. It kind of has a better energy than some of their other records. Other records kind of have their little intervals and stuff. They kind of drag on a little bit more, but I feel like, the production's a little bit better. The Fragile Army is sort of my number one record for them. That's one reason I got it on vinyl. So that kind of came out on the 19th of June. It's like the day before my birthday in 2007. So then I'm on my... Do I have one on my birthday? No, I don't. And then the same day sees the debut album, and they put out an EP before that. England's own Stateless. They put out one or two records after this, but this is their best. And it got a little play among some of the alternative radio stations and college stations. Songs like Bloodstream, and the Language. The singer from Run Rivers, I don't know if he was known by that at the time, later worked with Monae, and he's done a lot of solo music and guest on a lot of, but a magnet for famous fans and rave reviews. Stateless have already worked with some highly acclaimed collaborators, including Arctic Monkeys producer Jim Abbas and superstar DJ Shadow. Yeah, there's a lot of DJ kind of elements, so you could say they share some stuff in common with Pepe Deluxe, though Pepe Deluxe wasn't doing as much of that at the time. But Prison Number One, was it Blue Trace and Inscape? Blue Trace is very heavy, almost like one review compared it to Massive Attack, but heavy synths. So this was really indie-tronica in some ways. Anyway, the self-titled debut from Stateless came out on June 19th as well, the same day as the Polyphonic Spree record. So then the next week sees the second album from Editors, which I thought I had a copy of it. I didn't see it over there, but they toured with Biffy Clyro, and I got to know them. This was their best album. There definitely was an influence from the sort of post-punk, My Bloody Valentine, Interpol. They're compared to Interpol. I remember they were. Susie and the Banshees, Joy Division, that kind of era. But in U2, of course, there's a very big U2 element. And this was their record that kind of got me the most, and has to start their second record. Came out on June 25th, 2007. So speaking of St. Vincent, just like Annie Clark, like Steven Wilson had done early in the year, she put out her debut album just soon after this. It was July 10th, 2007, Marry Me. So she'd done The Fragile Army and then that, which is my favorite and kind of the only St. Vincent album I actually like now. Now, the title track, Paris is Burning. Your Lips Are Red. That's very King Crimson with the crashing piano and stuff like that. Landmines. It's a very good debut album, and it is kind of Annie Haslam singing with King Crimson, which I felt like she lost basically after this happened. But I know she used to hang out on King Crimson message boards. But anyway, people love St. Vincent. This is her debut album, Marry Me, and I saw her live 3-4 times. She was better live than the studio stuff, anyways. But then she kind of became the hipster darling, and it kind of didn't do as much for me. And so anyway, but that came out on July 10th, 2007. The week after, I talked about them very beginning of this video. Sees the second or the third, I think it was the third, and the final record, might have been the second album, from Strata. Strata presents the end of the world. Eric Victorino sounds even better on this album. It's one really big banger track on this album I always think of it for. It's called Poughkeepsie, New York. The Hallelujah, where Eric goes, Hallelujah. It kind of drags that part. It's very catchy and very memorable. There's other good tracks on this album, but Stay Young. Yeah, I mean in pure prog, but it's artsy enough. Again, I compare it to some of the similar kind of stuff that Dredge had done, and Caddisfly. Yeah, really liked Strata. I wish they would have lasted longer, but I know they did a band called the Limousines, which Dino from Dredge, I think they did. I'm thinking of Deftones, but Dino from Dredge played with them. Anyway, Strata presents the End of the World. Released on the 17th of July 2007, a week after St. Vincent, rather, a couple weeks after Stateless. So then on the 24th of July 2007, the version I am holding right now is not the version that came out later, but would it be the one, two, three, the fourth proper full length album, I think? Yeah. They released the album twice. 3, update New York band. The end is begun. Of course, the grammar is intentional. Like, society is devolving. And there's a big sort of influence from, of all things, Terminator, the Terminator 2 movie, I believe, because there's a video on For These Iron Bones, which like shows clips like basically channeling and referencing it. This is a fantastic album. I love the riffs. It's heavy. It was the second album they released on Metal Blade. The previous album was just a re-release, but first new album, you could say. From The World is Born to Flame, The End has Begun, the title track, All That Remains. My Divided Falling has that section like it's really fast and busy. Diamond in the Crush is super catchy. These Iron Bones, that's the song I was talking about, the Terminator, The Last Day. Serpents in Disguise is the other huge banger. This is an incredible record. Some days hopefully it'll come up. We don't have any 3 on vinyl at this point, but someone should ask Joey Uppetter about that. But The End has Begun. Came out on July 24th, 2007. So then, the week after that, just a couple days after that, Tokyo GN puts out Variety. And I'm not going to be able to elaborate on, I haven't listened to this album in a long time, but I kind of see that as the last great Tokyo GN album. Although news today, they maybe put out a record this coming next year in 25. I liked Daikin, and the one they put out was it last couple of years ago was okay. But anyway, Variety from Tokyo GN on the 26th of July 2007. So then on August 7th, 2007, sees the second and speaking of like bands that only put out 2 albums, like People for Audio, second and final album from and without Casey Crescenzo, the Receiving End of Sirens, The Earth Sings Me Fa Me, the follow-up from Between the Heart and the Synapse. It's very spacey, it's very kind of textured, there's some really punchy riffs. I think Brendan Brown is an all-star on this record. There's a lot of great tracks on it. Songs like Swallow People Whole, Saturnus, Stay Small is very catchy. Smoke and Mirrors, Pale Blue Dot. Yeah, I mean, it's not as good, not as catchy, not as addictive as Between the Heart and the Synapse. But as a second effort, as a second record, it's still very good. There was a lot of talk about, well, Casey's not in the band. They were talking to both Brendan and Alex Bars, the other members of Trios. But yeah, they're singing Nice by Me. Another very good record from them. Unfortunately, that was their final. They're going to be doing some shows with Casey, though, in a few months as a reunion, another reunion, which would be kind of neat. I'm not going to be able to go to them, unfortunately, but then on August 11th, that was the 7th of August. August 11th sees it's the second proper full length from Denmark's Jazz Kamikaze, Traveling at the Speed of Sound. I haven't listened as much. That the one that followed this one I know because they used vocals, but notable because it was kind of a little bit of a breakthrough from them compared to their debut record. That came out on August 11th, 2007. So then August 20th, 2007. August is just like June. Every month was just an epic year. Minus the Bear puts out Planet of Ice. Their best record, the record that made myself and many others fans. Progius, they worked with Daryl Hall, I believe, on this. At least maybe they recorded it as a studio. I can't remember. They were listening to King Crimson, but Daryl had worked with Robert Fripp on his solo album, one of his solo albums. But Burying Lock, Nights, Dr. Liling, and Double Vision Quest are my go-tos. But this is their best record by far for me, Planet of Ice from Minus the Bear. They put out some other records since, and then eventually they called it a day. But this is their peak, and this came out on the 20th of August 2007. Um, so then the day after that, and Minus the Bear actually got some hipster cred. Another band that hipsters approve, but I actually approve too. Probably the last great record from this band, the New Pornographers, Challengers, which this 2007 was the year I got into them. So this has like I have personal bias with this record. Although it's not my favorite. The one before it I like a little bit more, but kind of splitting hairs. But songs like Myriad Harbor, the title track, My Right versus Yours, all the old showstoppers, entering White Cecilia. I felt like they in some ways hit on all cylinders. Like they knew what each member's strengths were. They the three-headed monster, kind of like Phenomena, Nico Cage, Dan Behar, and AC Newman. But yeah, unfortunately, they haven't put out an album I've liked anywhere near this much since. But Challengers is, and I saw them live on that tour for the first time. Very good record. That came out on the 21st of August 2007. So August is finally done. Then we move to September, the final quarter of the year. Or not quite, but I'm not missing. Oh, there's one more release. The same day as I skipped it, as Minus the Bears Planet of Ice. The debut EP from the Reign of Kingdom. I don't know what's going on with little thing. Self-titled. They were coming off the ashes of This Day and Age, although the Joey Scara, whatever, I never say his last name. Joey wasn't the singer with that band, but he was a singer on this. But it's got several tracks that, it's got a cover of that Flaming Lips song. But what is it? Needle and Thread. That's the one song they still play live sometimes. But yeah, I mean it's a great EP. Set the stage, cue the music. Hard to believe. Jazz, pop, rock. They were differentiating themselves from This Day and Age to some degree. And some of the members changed besides the singer. But they had, unfortunately, the Reign of Kindle has had a long history of lineup changes. They've been the same in some ways, but it's really just like Joey Eppard and company. Kind of like ours is with Jimmy Necco, but yeah, that came out on the 20th also. So I forgot, almost missed that one. All right, so moving on to September, another EP. Not their debut or anything like that, though. But it had been a couple years since their debut, their sort of proper album. Ben Sinister puts out the self-titled EP, which Time Breaks Down is maybe still the best song they've ever written that Dan Moxon ever wrote. Super catchy, very like Jellyfish and Queen-like. But yours truly, TV War is fantastic. High Horse, every track on this thing is really good. The only issue I've ever had is you can hear the cymbals clip a little bit in the mixing, but I love this thing. I know the lineup was very different other than Dan. Navin, the same guitarist that was in Navin, Ruthnum, and Jason Dana. But yeah, the self-titled, and a lot of the songs were on MySpace at the time, I remember. But on September 4th, 2007, came out from Ben Sinister. Then a band that I haven't thought about in a long time, Centaur Rodeo, who are a little bit like Reign of Kindle from memory. Put out their album Tongues of Flame, although I haven't heard in ages. It might be on, I doubt it's on Spotify, it might be on YouTube, but I found it on a blog and I liked it a lot. But that came out on the 6th of September 2007. So then on the 11th of September 2007, the only album from this band, but being a fan of Anathello, they really kind of appealed to me. And a few people that I suggested to that love Anathello got into them too. Jared, Micah, and Hats. I think they're from Nashville. Their album TCHTOB. There's a little bit of a Christian element on this too, but the chamber rock just totally works. It even recommends it for Most Serene Republic and Anathello. Yeah, and they were gonna do some more music, and a friend of mine, more of a friend of a friend, actually became the drummer of this band for briefly. Zeke Zumbach. He's not on this album, I don't think, but yeah, you want chamber rock. They go in the same category. They just got less success than Anathello or some of the bands and Margot Nuclear So and So's, but CD case is gonna topple over if I don't be careful. So that came on the 11th on 9/11 on 2007. So then the day after that, I used to have a physical copy, and again that's one of those ones I've misplaced. But the second to last release from one Woven, the Aftermath EP, which I don't find it's quite as good as the first Woven EP. That's so great, but textured rock. And the Dredge fans were gaga for it, and I can totally see why. So Woven's on the 12th of September 2007, Aftermath EP came out. So then the 18th of September, Time of Orchids releases their final album, Namesake Caution, on Cuneiform. They moved from John Zorn's label to that sort of avant prog label. Um, Namesake Caution, which I like this album. I like it more than their first two records. I don't like it as much as the previous record. But I haven't listened in a long time. It has the 10-minute epic We Speak in Shards. But it's probably in some ways the most polished because it was their final record. I don't know if they knew it was going to be their final record at the time, but this came out on the 18th of September 2007. Time of Orchids, Namesake Caution. So then I thought I had misplaced it, and I found it. The 25th of September sees the music that didn't make Fear of a Blank Planet from Porcupine Tree, Nil Recurring, which I contended then, and I still contend to this day, is better than, much better than Fear of a Blank Planet, just for the song Normal alone. Normal's great. Cheating the Polygraph is very jazzy. What Happens Now in the title track, Nil Recurring. Good EP. It's only like whatever it is, like 20, like 15, 13, and 13, so 28. It's like just under 30 minutes, but Nil Recurring from Porcupine Tree being released on the 25th of September 2007. So then on the October, now we finally get into the fourth quarter. The Most Serene Republic put out Population, their third album, I think it is. I'm not, I have a lot of their CDs. I would see them regularly, but I've not spent tons of time. I need to someday go back to some of these albums, but because I bought it new, I think I bought it from them at the concert. I saw them with the band Annuals, but yeah, I can't really talk much more about this album, but it's been the one that I actually saw them. That wasn't the tour that were supporting it, but yeah, I mean their catalog may kind of rival Anathello in some ways, but it's called Repopulation from Canada's own, Montreal's own Most Serene Republic on October 2nd, 2007 came out. So then I skip a few weeks, because October wasn't even comparable to say like, August or June or March. Coheed and Cambria follows up Good Apollo 1 with Good Apollo 2, Good Apollo on Burning Star 4, Volume 2, No World for Tomorrow. And while I like this album somewhat, it was pretty much a disappointment because of how good Good Apollo 1 was and how much I loved In Keeping Secrets. Still not bad, but I feel like they've done better. The last two records are better than it. The production's okay. I know this is the one that has Taylor Hawkins from the, of course, the Foo Fighters and everything like that. What is it? What is it? There's one or two songs on here that are kind of Radio Bye Bye, Fall from of the House Atlantic, Feathers was kind of a minor hit. It's got a lot of bonus on the DVD, of course. I was really the better part of me, the darker part of me, on some of the different records, but yeah, there's one track that's super Pink Floydy. I want to say that On the Brink, the last track, sounds like it's something from Dark Side or Wish You Were Here. But anyway, Coheed and Cambria's that came out on the 23rd of October 2007. Good Apollo on Burning Star 4, Volume 2, No World for Tomorrow. Didn't have David Bottrill, I don't believe. Although, I have less issue with the production and mixing on that album compared to some of the records that followed it. So then, on the same day, actually, sees the the final record, and like, what is it, the third or fourth record from Far Less, who I know from Virginia, A Toast to Bad Taste, the one that I got into them a little bit. They were compared to Dredge, Virginia-based, yeah. I haven't listened to this basically probably since 2007, 2008. And just like some of the others, I don't have the compact disc. Probably in a book. But the title track, A Surprise Funeral for the Charmed. I like the use of dynamics in the piano especially, which is a common trait for a lot of this kind of stuff. Brand new and Dredge. Yes, this is why I bought it. Merging the dynamic elements of rock bands like Muse and the intelligence and finesse of Brand New and Dredge. I don't like Brand New, but I love Dredge and I like Muse. Then astute knack for combining melody with crafty instrumentation and drawing inspiration from both current and 90s alt rock bands. Far Last, A Toast to Bad Taste, also like the same day as Coheed and Cambria's follow-up. Their final record, I don't know what the members of Far Less are doing now, but came out on the 23rd of October 2007. So the week after, sees the second album from the first one I have on CD, Nicole Atkins, Neptune City, which includes the title track on the 30th of October. Neptune City totally sounds like, to me, it sounds like Linda Ronstadt doing orchestral pop, really. Pop rock, or, Brooklyn's on fire, the party's over. There's a bunch of tracks. I think one or two of them have been re-recorded or just put on here, but maybe tonight. She has a great voice. She's from New Jersey. Connections with like Fountains of Wayne. I think she might know Jimmy Necco of ours too. But anyway, Neptune City from Nicole Atkins. She toured with Fountains of Wayne. I saw her before that actually though. But on the Neptune City on the coming out on October 30th, 2007. The same day sees the second album, the follow-up from Daniel Victor's, big multiple voices, multiple singers project, conceptual project, Never Ending White Lights, Act 2, The Blood and Life Eternal, which does include the services again of Jimmy Necco of ours on Dove Colored Sky, which is dreamy as hell, and some of the best vocal performance Jimmy's ever given. Many other tracks I like, song like The Warning. I always think of like David Gilmour and Pink Floyd when I hear that track. Always, I think that's Daniel singing. The Living, Courtney Palermo's on that. Not maybe Aqualung, the band, the artist Aqualung. Distance. There's not as many bigger names, and there's a few of them, but I feel like I go back and forth. If I'm choosing between the two, I probably would choose the first one, but this has more notable, memorable songs, I guess you could say, than the first one. But I'll be talking about the one that followed it later, of course. But anyway, Never Ending White Lights, Act 2, The Blood and Life Eternal, released just like Nicole Atkins, Neptune City, on the day before Halloween in 2007, October 30th. So then there's one album on here, another final album, just like Far Last and some of these other bands that only have 2 albums. I don't have an actual date, but I have a month. It came out in October of 2007, and I didn't even hear them until the next year after they'd broken up. They're called, the band that I mentioned a few videos ago, the Ebb and Flow, and their album Attack and Decay, the final Ebb and Flow album. I think this is Independence Day, Lady Liberty, some fun just like busy string parts that kind of harmonize with the vocals from the female vocalist. A carefully woven network of lies. Yeah, they were a local band for the most part, but I don't know. I found out about like a blog or a podcast. I think it was a podcast, but yeah, you can see it was just on a CDR case they made these. But Attack and Decay, the second and final album from the Ebb and Flow, coming out sometime in October 2007. So, and then oh my God, I totally skipped. I forgot the first album in October, so it predated right after Porcupine's No Recurring. Epic record from Ocean Size, Frames. One of the most beloved records in the progressive art rock style, the modern progressive art rock style. And the progressive rock scene kind of latched onto them from this one, especially. I think this was originally released on Super Bowl music, but commemorative t-shirt, remember 9/11 t-shirt. It's not about 9/11 actually. An Unfamiliar, Sleeping Dogs and Dead Lions, Savant, Trailfire, the string section, so the dynamics. They took what they did with Everyone in Position and perfected it in some ways. Somewhat of a concept album about Friday the 13th, maybe specifically the first movie. The frame is just majestic. It's so, uplifting, sad yet uplifting. Dun, that string part, that interval pattern. Dun, na, 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 na. This is essential. This is required listening if you never listened to any of this music or this kind of music and never listened to Ocean Size. And it's not necessarily my favorite, although I could hard time saying it's more. But saying in the records I like more. I mean that and EIP I kind of they're 1A and 1B really. But that was released on October 1st, so I missed that. I didn't move that. I didn't change that. That yes, okay. So I only have a couple left. The debut EP from a band that didn't really get their break, but I found out about them through MySpace probably. 100-Foot Snowman, which 100-Foot Snowman, this band from I think from California, they kind of sounded like Minus the Bear somewhat, but they have this song called, which I have their second EP, which is a burn disc also, Estranged. But they were great. They just didn't. They didn't get. The label was going to offer them a contract, but the label was going to take like 80 or 90% of the money. They said, forget it. Then they formed a band called Zookeeper's Palace, which is they were big Mew fans. It's like 2 different Mew songs combined. Anyway, that came out on November 1st, 2007. Then November 6th, 2007, I didn't grab my DVD. I have the DVD for this. Sigur Rós puts out Harfheim, which I have a strong personal connection to this because I got food poisoning. I want to say it was probably the following spring, maybe it was March or whatever. And I bought the DVD that I own now. Hopefully I have it over there. That thing was like a healing thing. It totally helped me get through that food poisoning. But yeah, Sigur Rós, probably the last great thing they did actually. I've liked some of the stuff they put out since, but anyway. And then the final one that I've got, another EP from a super obscure band. And again, I don't remember exactly how I found out about this band, probably on MySpace, maybe on a blog. They're called Diss Trails, a band from, there's a connection with Dredge, sort of. Jared from Diss Trails, him and his wife Bitsy, they're from North Carolina. Jared was in the band Telescreen, who did tour with Dredge at one point. But yeah, this is like, I don't know how to describe it. A little bit like Ours, a little bit Never Ending White Lights. Jared has this great kind of almost like Dallas Green from Cillian Color, this great falsetto, clean, gentle voice, sad voice, and Bitsy writes these very kind of delicate, enchanting piano lines. Virginia Creeper, Hourglass. This EP is called Virginia Creeper, the title track. So the title track is one of them. Broken English is one of my favorites. This is completely like undiscovered gem music, just like some of these other ones I've been talking about in this series. It's kind of tragic, unfortunately, about Diss Trails. I'll be talking about them again because they had one more EP. It came out a couple years later, I believe. And unfortunately, Bitsy developed some sort of very rare condition, kind of like Carpal Tunnel, where she wasn't able to play. A little bit like what happened to Troy from Zero, or the bass player. I was in touch with her, I think eventually on Facebook about it and stuff like that. But I always thought they're definitely one of those what could have been. Even if they would have just put out one full length. Local band here, Between Two Skies, kind of is the same deal. They only put out one EP and they played live for like 4 years and we never got the full length they were going to release. So, but that's it for the Epic 2007 video. I'll go on to 2008. I have a bad feeling that pretty much every one of these videos is going to be about between 45 minutes and an hour long, just because they're long epic lists. And they're just, if I'm really doing it justice, I'm covering as the obscure of the most obscure of the obscure, and including fighting for the little guy, which a lot of this music represents me fighting for the little guy. I just want to talk about them all, so I'm going to include as many as I can, and I'm going to include the ones I missed too. So wrap up to summarize. Yeah, 2007, the class 2007. It was kind of a battle for album of the year for me. I haven't done the 2007 albums of the year, but between Kiss Kiss and eventually Phenomena, that was later, a few years later, but Caddisfly, Fair to Midland, The Deer Hunter, and then Ocean Size, and then of course you include, that was like that class. It was just like one, two. It really hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, this is really a new style of progressive rock, even though most people that are prog rock fans that love the Yes and Genesis and love Spock, Spear, and Transatlantic, and even Dream Theater, weren't really recognizing it as a style. They were like, yeah, Mars Volta, okay, but it really, 2007 in some ways was kind of in some ways it was the peak. It wasn't fully the peak, and I can say that the next few years were kind of as big, if not bigger. But in some ways, I look at it as the peak, and it was a special year, just like 2005. Maybe I'll rank the years when I'm done with this whole series. But yeah, anyway, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.